for a few moments? I'm going to share a passion I have. Many of you know this. As a kid in high school, I loved to play sports, and looking back, was not terribly good at it. But I also loved to take pictures, and that was kind of a passion of mine. That's why I so identified, Abby, with you when you told me that this is something you enjoy doing in school. And I'm not to embarrass you, but I did ask you beforehand, have you started taking pictures of faces, portrait-type pictures? And you said yes.
Yeah.
Hard, isn't it? Why?
It's just like the setup of it. You have to like get the right angle, and it's just like hard to think of each one differently.
And do you find trying to anticipate what they're going to look like or say or move and whatnot, and it's hard? Okay, I'm going to take you and pluck you 2,000 years into the past. Okay? Because I want you to be a photographer at an incident. And the incident is what I read in Scripture at you today. I want you to kind of think about this. Take pictures of the faces in the crowd, not of the healing of this man, but of the faces of the crowd watching what's going on. All right? Jesus walking to Jerusalem, which we know from knowing the Scriptures, he's walking to the celebration of Passover. He's walking to his own death. And he's aware that bad things are about to happen. It's the road to the cross. And he passes through this town by the name of Jericho. What happened to Jericho? Sing it.
The walls came tumbling down.
Hey, all right. There's hope for you people yet. Okay. Jericho survived because of where it is. Jesus and most of his ministry is up north in the Galilee. Jerusalem is in the south, even though up on a hill on Mount Zion. Okay? The shortest distance between two ports is not a straight line because you do not go from Galilee straight down to Jerusalem. You would have to go through the territory of Samaria. Think of Samaria as just one bad neighborhood that you do not travel through. It was ethnically different from the people of both the north and the south. It was always an area where you took your life in your hands if you traveled into that area on your own. So he did what most people used to do back then. They come to the border, the southern border of Galilee, cross the Jordan River, go down what's called today the Transjordan, and then cross back over at the point in the river which is closest to Jerusalem, which is the town of? Very good. All right, so he passed Geography 101. Okay? So he walks through this town, this wandering woodworker preacher surrounded by a crowd of people, some of whom are disciples, some of whom are followers in a sort of a light kind of way. Some are just listening, some are groupies, some are curious. And you can imagine him teaching as he's walking, as people did. And there's Abby in the crowd taking pictures of the faces of the crowd. Now, the scholars tell us that come Passover, every Jewish male over the age of 12, if you lived within, it was so many thousand cubits, it comes out to about 15 miles in our terminology. If you lived within 15 miles of Jerusalem, you were expected, if you were a male, to go and celebrate Passover in Jerusalem and take part in the liturgies, the services, the sacrifices, the prayers, and all of that stuff. That was expected if you was a male. It was encouraged if you was a female. It was expected as a male. But as you all know, there's law and there's law. Okay? Practical thing. Not everyone can just pack up their life and go and take the next week off. These are farmers. Who's going to run the farm? Who's going to do the work? These are moms. Who's going to take care of the kids? You going to trust your husband with that? All right? Don't make that face, Cynthia. For many, it was impossible to go. So what they would do is a lot of times people would just, as these crowds would kind of pass through Jericho on their way to Jerusalem, they would just sort of come out of their houses and just ask people to pray for them. And when I was a student in Rome, okay, I lived in Rome for 4 years, no big deal. But I can remember many times friends of my mom or dad who were just passing through asked me, taking them to St. Peter's or one of the other great churches, and would I say a prayer for them when they left? You know, it's very common for people to do that. So among the pictures that Abby is taking, she's getting the faces of people who are religiously interested, maybe those who would like to go, but just for life, because life happens, they can't. All right? She's got the faces of people who are religiously involved and committed, even if they can't physically do it. But Jericho has another advantage too. It's a very interesting town. I said this last night, and people St. Paul's did not get the humor until I explained it. I'm trying. I'll see if I can do it better this time. All right? It's a place I wouldn't want to live because the place was full of priests. That's a joke, guys.
Yeah.
John, I'm 0 for 2. I'm going to just change that for next year. What I mean by that is this. And to get, and those of you who've taken Bible study with me, you know I've tried to describe what the temple in Jerusalem was really like. And the only way I can do this to give you to make you understand, to use the phrase, size matters, okay? How many of y'all have either been to Yankee Stadium, Citi Field, or Shea Stadium in your life? Raise your hands, okay?
Shea and City.
Shea and City. Okay, I just, so you've been to the place.
Yeah.
Then even the place up in the Bronx. Okay, this is not going to be about baseball, Ron. Okay, but both of those stadiums hold approximately 50,000 people. The old Yankee Stadium held closer to 60,000, I remember being told, okay? Now, I want you to kind of use your imagination, unless any of you have actually been out and seen the Rose Bowl in LA. The Rose Bowl holds 102,000. It's double the size of either Yankee Stadium, Shea Stadium, or Citi Field. Now, the temple complex in Jerusalem was 2 to 3.5 times the size of the Rose Bowl. We'd have no idea how huge this complex was, with its buildings and its fortresses and its various courtyards and areas where people could pray and could not pray. It is this massive complex, all right, that required a staff of about, we think, if we can believe Josephus writing about the history of the time, about 20,000 priests. 26 different rotations of priests doing prayers, offering sacrifice, yada, 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 doing all that stuff. The point is, not everyone is serving at the same time. So where do you live when you're not on duty? You live in the closest town. If you're rich enough, you go out to the suburbs, which is what they did. And the suburbs happen to be a town named Jericho. So you're really with me. Okay, good. So in this crowd where Abby is taking pictures, there are the faces of priests who now know or want to see something of this Galilean golden boy who is causing such a racket. There are faces of hostility in that crowd, and if she has her camera and if she's taking pictures of everyone, she's going to grab a couple of those. And finally, and most importantly, there is the face that's not looking back. And she might get that one, especially when the noise starts. We are told that there was a man who was blind. We don't even know his name. Bartimaeus is not a name. B-A-R in Hebrew means son of. It's like, how many of you, in the Irish Celtic, Mick something? McDougal means son of Dougal, okay? B-A-R means son of. So B-A-R Timaeus just means son of Timaeus. This is a person who has no name. He's not a person at all. He's just referred to as, that's Timaeus' kid. All right? It's kind of like, Lauren, it would be kind of like saying that's Rochelle's daughter, and that's the only way you describe her for the rest of her life. You have no name of your own, no personality of your own. You're just Michael's daughter or Rochelle's daughter. How would that make you feel? Seriously.
I don't know, bad.
Bad? Okay, fair enough. So this person who has no name of his own that we know of, no personality that we know of, he starts causing a ruckus. And we know him for doing 3 things, and you got the picture of it. He seeks Jesus out, he was healed, and he becomes a follower. He walks on the path of discipleship because of a couple of things. First of all, he was persistent. He was one of these annoying people who kept calling out and kept making noise when people asked him to be quiet. This wasn't just sentimental wish to be around Christ, to go to church once a month or whatever. He really wanted something, and he really firmly believed in his heart of hearts this preacher, healer, could help him. His response is immediate, and it's life-changing. And Mark, in Mark's own unique way, kind of captures this in a way that most of us don't even pay attention to. We're told he tosses his cloak off and jumps up. And just think about that. This is a blind person leaping literally into the darkness, hoping that someone will catch him and give him sight. That's faith. He tosses aside his cloak, the only thing he probably owns, because that gives him shelter. And that's faith. He knew what he needed. He knew what he wanted. Even though his understanding of Jesus was very inadequate. You'll notice he used the phrase that we don't use all the time, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus, as we know from the four Gospels, never ever used that phrase. Although it was an expected title of the Messiah, he never touched it because it had all this political baggage associated with it. And never referred to himself in those words. But even though this guy's understanding of who Jesus is was totally inadequate, didn't make any difference, he believed, and the Lord accepted him. So this is what you're taking pictures of, Abby, as you're taking pictures of the faces in the crowd. And then you're going to come back and join us and turn around, take your camera out, and start taking pictures of the people around you. All right? The great irony of the story is the only man who understood who Jesus is, the only person who saw him, was the blind guy. They could see, and it didn't matter. And we can be very snarky and say, how blind are they? In our world, which is falling apart around us, we who need Christ in our lives, and he's there for us if we would just open our eyes to see him, and we don't. How blind are we?